All right. Welcome to the Sustainability Strategy Summit. I'm your host, Jessie Servi Ortiz, and today's interview is with Steve Thomas, Chief Risk and Compliance Officer for Kohl's Corporation. Welcome, Steve, and thanks so much for being here.
Jessie, thanks. Great to be here for sure.
Great. Well, we all know the last year and a half has been very difficult for business, and especially in the retail industry due to the pandemic. So I know Kohl's has really taken this time to sort of take a step back, think, and reprioritize your future. Can you share with us what or where sustainability fits into your overall corporate strategy today?
Yeah, it's a great question. So yeah, I mean, this past year's been a historic year for sure, right? So in the retail sector, with closed stores, with curbside delivery, we were all trying to figure out, well, what's the new norm going to be? Mm-hmm. And in relationship to sustainability, you know, we certainly had a sustainable program. So my department was all things sustainability. We worked on those things within the company, but it gave us a chance to then say, well, wait a second. While we are in this thing called sustainability, while we are doing things right, environmentally compliant and things of that nature, how could we potentially amplify that approach? And so we took the opportunity to do that, to leverage our 2019 climate goals, our 3 public goals that we had on climate change, on waste and recycling, and sustainable sourcing, and really just amp that up and make sure that it was really part of our full DNA as a company. And so we did that, and we published our first ever ESG report, our environmental social governance report, and sustainability is obviously a big part of that as we move forward. So it's been a great program. It is fundamentally a pillar of how we do business here at Kohl's.
That's so great to hear. And for listeners, we will include your ESG report in the link to the email so folks can take a look at that. I know I read it myself and was just coming from a retail background, just impressed with the breadth that you are focused on in that report. It's a really well put together report. So,
well, thanks for that.
Yeah. So, you know, you've been focused, as you said, on aspects of sustainability for years, sort of these environmental metrics. And, you know, we've sort of discussed that's growing. You're saying you're embedding that more. And I know the CEO, Michelle Gass, is really all in. Can you sort of share with us about Kohl's evolution, you know, from sort of the risk and compliance angle to kind of focused on sustainability and corporate social responsibility, and now focused on ESG?
Yeah, so, you know, when we were expanding our store base, and we weren't in all states, we're in 49 states, excluding Hawaii, but as we're building out these states and building out these stores, you know, every state had a new regulatory environment, right? So you had to deal with that, and you had to make sure that our stores were disposing of the waste appropriately. You needed to make sure your distribution centers are doing the same thing. You wanted to make sure you were doing the right thing emissions-wise. You know, all of the, what I would call the core basics of environmental compliance. And so we did that, right? But now, as we have filled out our store portfolio, what is the next gen and what could we do? And really take the compliance and go, okay, wait a second, that's good and that's important, but how can we really get into this thing called sustainability? So about 4 or 5 years ago, we really looked at it in a broader and bigger way. And how could we engage the customer? How could we engage the associate, and now increasingly the investment community, in this thing called sustainability? So we looked at it in terms of pushing out more things like, okay, we can do solar. We can put solar on our stores. And what does that look like? Now, for us, we have to make sure that there's an ROI behind it because we're a public company. But can we do right by the environment at the same time, become very operational efficient and actually save money? So solar was one of those plays. When we went into California, we were able to put a number of solar panels on a number of our stores. And currently today, we have 165 stores with either solar or wind power across the nation. So it's that kind of an example of how we elevated the compliance to sustainability now, and we keep adding to that portfolio.
Yeah, great. So many other questions come up. I know that you've also put in electric vehicle charging stations at your stores, and I assume that's probably growing as well.
Yeah, no, I should have mentioned it. So thank you for asking me the question. So one of the things we did see again was this trend that the automakers, the battery capability was broadening and bigger, so that folks could actually get an electric vehicle that could be used for many hours, many miles. And we wanted to be part of that solution and part of that driver to the customer that, hey, Kohl's is about this thing, and we could attract you to our stores by having an electrical vehicle station at the store. So we have currently 126 stores with electrical vehicle stations, and we'll have 150 by year end. And again, that's going to continue to amp up because the battery technology is getting that much better. There's quick charges now, so the customer can come in to our stores, right? They plug in while they go in and they shop, they come out, they're charged up, they're ready to go. So it's really been a great add-on for those customers who are getting electric vehicles and will be getting electric vehicles.
Yeah, fantastic. So, both times here you've mentioned stores. Can you give us a sense of how many stores you have across the 49 states?
Yes, we have a little over 1,150 stores, give or take, and we're adding a few this coming year. So it's been a great journey to get there. I started when we were only 220 stores, so it's been quite a ride over the last 20 plus years.
Wow. All right, let's take just a step back and talk about how is sustainability organized across Kohl's. So you have so many different functions and teams, from operations to like the customer facing. How does the organization work together to move these goals forward?
Yeah, so there isn't any particular direct, hey, this thing, this entity, this department has and only is sustainability, except for risk and compliance. And we have a department called Sustainability and Environmental Compliance. And what that team does is they're really the hub, and they spoke out to each of our other departments. So facilities is one of those departments. They're in charge of making sure that we get solar on our stores. We have the marketing department, right? They are responsible to market the fact that we have a great sustainability program. We have a real estate department that gets these stores, has them LEED certified in terms of the building. So we spoke out to each of these areas, including things like logistics, where if they're shipping the product literally across the United States, how are they doing it in what we call a smart way, the EPA smart way to do that? So my team, our team, what they do is they work with each of these individual departments to spoke out to make sure that we're thinking about and we're reacting accordingly to what we can do sustainability wise in each of these areas. And we are both pushing, cajoling, influencing, and then also providing them resources and information as to, well, look, hey, this is what's going on over in your world. What about this? Why shouldn't we be part of this? Can we be part of this? What is the ROI? So again, our job is to provide that forum, if you will, to get that department to move forward in the right way, to broaden and make our bigger ESG goals really having them be delivered.
Yeah. Fantastic. That makes a lot of sense. And it's everyone organizes it a little different. And I like how you've just taken your structure and it's evolved over time, but yet it has this layer of accountability sort of woven in.
Yeah.
So I know that you mentioned some climate goals when we started. So can you talk a little bit about what your current climate goals and strategy are going forward?
Yeah, so I mean, it's really, I mean, the two main ones, right, are reduce the greenhouse emissions and then increase renewable energy. So we do that in a couple of ways, right? So we have a huge retrofit program within our stores to put in LEDs. And we have a capital investment that's in the millions year over year to do that. So that lowers our emissions, right? Just purely on the lighting basis.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about increasing our solar. We've talked about the EV piece. We've talked about wind. So all of these different pieces contribute to that overall goal, that climate goal of reducing greenhouse emissions. And we have commitments out there, public commitments, that by 2025 we'll be at a certain percentage level. And we're certainly we're not gonna just stop there in 2025. We're gonna continue forward, obviously, with doing what we can for the environment.
Yeah, fantastic. I know it's, climate used to be sort of a really far out part of the strategy. And I think as businesses evolve in their sustainability thinking, they sort of make the connection between greenhouse gas and efficiency and greenhouse gas and cost. And so, we're seeing more and more companies now have these larger climate sort of strategies and maybe net zero goals or anything like that. So it's just really fun to sort of hear how each business is kind of making sense of that and planning and prioritizing it.
Yeah. And what we do from a big picture perspective, and again, I mentioned before, we're a public company. We have board oversight of our climate strategy. So we have what is called a nominating and ESG committee that our board has. That's a committee of the board. And then we meet quarterly to discuss those strategies. And then the full board for us gets an annual review, an annual oversight discussion about, well, what should we be doing? What shouldn't we be doing? And why aren't we doing more, right? And certainly, as I said before, the investment community is asking those questions as to, we need you to do more. What are you doing? And we want to make sure they're hearing and listening and seeing all the great things we're doing here at Kohl's.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been talking about ESG and just the beautiful sort of surgence that's happened in the last year or more, and many reasons for that, but also I think as a result of COVID, understanding that resiliency is important, and we have had a huge surgence in the social side of sustainability, and so it's really interesting to see how this investor ESG relationship with businesses is happening, and also to see how it's sort of trickling down the supply chain to smaller businesses in Wisconsin.
Yeah, well, and you make a good point on the smaller. So for us, on that supply chain, what we have is we have overseas factories, right? So what we're asking for, and we talk about the E and the S of ESG. So we've got the supply chain, we've got social. So we want to make sure that those factories are doing a couple of things. One is that they're taking care of their workers in a great way. The more they take care of their workers, their employees in a positive way, the better product literally they make for us. So that's so important. And that's that S. That's part of that social program we have, that we require them to do the right thing. And we monitor that, we audit that, we do all the things to make sure they're taking care of their people really well. But then on top of that, about 2 years ago, we instituted what is called the Higg Index. And what that is it's an environmental standard, right? And maybe you've talked about it before.
No, I haven't. The listeners haven't heard yet. I'm familiar, but please do share.
Yeah, so the Higg Index is really a set of standards that covers all the things we talk about, which is waste and recycling, emissions, all of the environmental pieces to sustainability. So we require those factories to report on, well, what are they doing in those pieces, and how are they taking care of the environment in Thailand, in Vietnam, in China, those kinds of places that we source product from. So that connection then flows back, right, from that social compact, I like to say, to that big S. So we've covered off the individual employees, the supply chain, and then the environment. So the E and the S are certainly captured. And for us, that G is ethics, right? How are we ethically responsible to all of those things? So that's how we kind of, I'll put a bow on the ESG, if you will.
Yeah. So I like that strategy a lot. And I'm curious, that's what you talked about, the supply chain, but I'm going to ask kind of about the sourcing side of that, because, we've seen an increase in, you're talking about the worker side of it, but also the actual material side of it. What, if anything, are you doing there?
So a great question. And that's a piece, actually, again, we talked about the evolution. We couldn't do all of that 5-10 years ago. And we just keep looking at opportunities. And one of those was this area. How can we make the product more sustainable? So is that making and having organic cotton as an example? That's a key thing. Can we use water less in it? So for example, with jeans requires a great deal of use of water. So interestingly, there's waterless technology that can actually reduce the amount of dye and water that you use in the manufacture of that particular jean. So those are two things. And then chemical sustainability is a big deal, right? So what cleaner solutions can we have those factories use in the production of all of the goods? And then finally, just as a generic one, sustainably sourced. So what are they doing could we use recycled poly in our garments, right? And so we have an icon system at Kohl's that we promote. So if you go on a label, you check, there's an icon system for those 4 things, as well as we've got a leaf that shows the branding that particular product has been made sustainably.
Great. So how do those partnerships work? I mean, I expect that you have to partner with those supply chain partners to sort of, or are you asking them to figure it out on their own, or how does that relationship look?
Yeah. So it's really twofold. So we have our national brands. So say the Levi's and the Adidas's of the world. We are in tune with them, and they are supporters of this thing called sustainability. So we're pushing them. So that actually is a very easy lift to make sure that we are conducting ourselves in the right way with them. And then separately, we are more in control of our private and exclusive brands. So the Croft and the Barrows, the Sonomas, the Lauren Conrads of the world, we run those factories in the sense of that's who we directly deal with. And so we have more direct control to make them adhere to our terms of engagement and requirements of completing, analyzing, and executing on the Higg Index. So in essence, they have to do it contractually. And if they don't, Jesse, then we were like, look, we don't want to be partners anymore. If you're not going to commit to these things, then we're not going to work with you at all.
I think that is a good message for down the supply chain to hear, because I'm getting more and more people reach out saying, oh my gosh, our largest customer is asking us what we're doing in sustainability, and we don't know how to answer. And so, just insight and forethought for those manufacturers who, and it's not all manufacturers, but primarily, right. That might be thinking this is a wave or a trend, or, it's kind of not there anymore. We're kind of to the point that you can lose major customers if you're not paying attention to this or willing to cooperate or figure it out. And really, as you've expressed, even with renewable energy, there still has to be an ROI where you're not asking businesses to do this because it doesn't make business sense.
Right. Well, I think, Jesse, all of your great work with the Wisconsin Sustainable Business Council kind of highlights that. And what I would say is you start small. So, you know, you start on things you can control. The waste and recycling is a way that all manufacturers can say, look, we're doing this the right way. We are literally separating these things, you know, the paper from the plastic, and we are making sure that it's disposed of properly. So you start there. And then you look for working with your energy companies that they could potentially help you. So that could be as simplistically as turning down the lights or installing lights. And you probably saw my lights went off on me, right? While we're having this video, because we're saving energy, but you can install that, and that makes an impact. That is literally helping the overall greenhouse emissions in that small way. So I would encourage everybody just to start small, control what you can control, and then seek out input from folks like you that can provide that guidance and what is possible, that it is not going to cost a company money to just try to do the right thing. You want to do it together. You want to do it right. We have to stay in business to provide, you know, jobs, and for us, we have shareholders. You know, you have that obligation, but you want to do it in the right way. And the more things that they can learn from people like yourself through the Wisconsin Sustainable Business Council, the easier it is, frankly.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And I'm sure that's true for you too, right? Like partnering and having these conversations with your customers and supply chain, right? It's what I have seen over the years is that sustainability is really an area where competitors are able to come together to problem solve for solutions versus focusing on, you know, competition.
Yeah. No, I think we can all learn from each other, right? And this is one of those areas where we're truly all in it together long term. So we do have to look to each other to see, well, how do we do it better? And then I would say, you know, you mentioned, you know, the partnership. So just here locally with Schneider National up in Green Bay. So they've started an EV truck pilot program, right? So eventually EV trucks are going to be the norm. Now, it's not today, it's probably not in 2 years or 3 years, but we want to be part of that. And we've expressed that to Schneider National, that we want to make a difference and be part of that, whatever that looks like. So it's having those conversations and connections. And to your point, I think just asking the question of like, well, where are you at with this stuff? Or what are you doing at your place that has worked or not worked? You just learn and you get better because of it.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought that piece up about distribution. You know, I'm kind of curious, like there's so much talk around on the distribution side, but also and the packaging side. So kind of what I call, you know, the downstream. So distribution, delivery, and then the end user, you know, and even packaging in and of itself and shipments, you know, it's like you give a little here, but then you wonder about the sustainability of some of these other effects. So, you know, what's going on in that level for Kohl's in terms of advancements or change?
Yeah, so again, going back to a little bit of the theme today would be the simple stuff. So for us, we don't make as much money literally if we have to send to you 5 packages for one order. So if we can get all of those 5 packages into one box, we've saved money because we only shipped it once. And the environment has saved because it's only come in one box, not 5 boxes. So we've concentrated a lot on consolidating shipments, not doing what we call split shipments. And that saves the environment and makes us or saves us money as well. So that would be one thing. But then also it's as simplistic as looking at the size of packaging, right? So, well, do you need to send it in this big box? You know, they just ordered this small little thing. Why is it being put in such a big box? And how can we look at our automation? And when they pull that box off to load it in, are we pulling the right box? And then things like plastic, right? So can we reduce the amount of plastic that covers that product? Whether we got that from the national brand or ourselves, Why do we need it? So a lot of the assumptions about, do we need to have it covered in plastic? Do we need to have it filled up with plastic protection so that so there's less breakage? Well, yes, in some cases that's true. We don't want the customer to have something broke when they get it to their house, but there are some things that just don't need it. So why are we doing that? So a lot of the little basics from an operational efficiency can be done, and we're working on all of that.
Yeah. Those are great. Those are great examples. I know, as you know, a user, always like check that box where like, please send my packages together. And I always wonder, do other, like, the convenience factor for people over like the education? Of course, I think sustainably, but not everybody does. And do you see customers open to that and receiving that as an option?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
And
That's
if
awesome
they,
to hear.
you know, we have to have a delta of, there are customers that want it fast, right? So we want it that, but there are some that would wait one day, literally one day or 2 days, to allow us to package in a way it comes in only one package. So yes, we're seeing that increasingly, that the customer is mindful of their obligation, if you will.
Yeah. Well, and you started to kind of touch on this, and maybe you could explain it a little more for us, because, you know, again, having some background in retail, I know it's so hard to communicate effectively with the customer. And so how are you finding ways to effectively communicate your sustainability story with, you know, an end user of a product, say?
Right. So in all ways, I would answer it. And everybody receives information differently, right, these days. So there's a lot of people who, you know, they're looking at their Twitter, their Facebook, their Instagram. So we're doing all of those things and pushing out messaging that says, hey, look at us. You know, we've won this sustainable award. We're packaging it in this way. So we're working those channels. We also have had TV ads that show our brand and that we're concerned about the environment and trying to do it that way. We've had radios. If you go into our stores, you'll hear sustainable messages. You'll see signage now on the outside of the store as well about showing our leaf and our sustainable programs and things of that nature. So we're really trying to hit every possible touch point that a customer might see. And in fact, and I had forgotten this because we did this a number of this. So I just got our Kohl's charge bill yesterday. And what it said was, it reminded me that, hey, would you like to, on the outside, it said, with our leaf, it had a sustainable icon. And it said, would you like to receive this via email as opposed to in paper, right?
Yeah.
And that this mail itself was produced with recyclable paper. So the message for us was twofold. One, we don't want to send you paper, but if we're going to send you paper, it's done on a recyclable fashion. But we're asking you as a customer to participate in this by saying, nope, I'm opting out. I want to get it via email. I'll pay my bill online, those kinds of things.
Yeah, another great example of making it simple and easy to reduce.
Right.
Well, you know, you've kind of, again, touched on some of this throughout, but, you know, I think, again, it's important to kind of call out, as you've evolved to sort of more of this ESG lens of sustainability. I thought it was really interesting that you really called out the social supply chain in the ESG report.
Yep.
And, you know, a lot of businesses kind of separate social even, or categorize that as humans, as people, separate from potential supply. So I was just wondering if you could speak to why Kohl's thinks it's important to have these together, and what is the major components of that strategy?
Yeah, so I think that the overall mission is the health and wellness of whoever is really touching our product. So that's the individual, like we talked about overseas. How are they being taken care of? Physically, mentally, emotionally, and environmentally in Vietnam? Are they being, is that particular factory, that owner doing right by them in all things? And if they are, again, that's good for them as a human being. That's good for them that they will then produce, again, like we talked, a great product. They will feel good and energized about working there. They will want to come to work. And as a result, then that product they make will be fantastic, and we'll be able to sell that product to our customers. So that social component is really all things. It's diversity and inclusion. It's making sure the health and wellness, emotionally, mentally, physically, of everyone is being taken care of. It's making sure that philanthropy, we're doing our part right charitable wise on that big thing called S and ESG. So there's so many components to that. And if you do those things well, if you treat people well, then for us, we think that customer then is going to really like us, want to buy from us, and that the product they wear will be great for them, right? So, so it really is that full circle, that full social compact circle we talked about earlier.
Okay, last question. I think that's great. I'm just curious, are you seeing that same theme, everything you talked about, true for your workers in particular? Are you having employees ask the question around sustainability, or saying that, you know, being engaged in the conversation throughout Kohl's and even maybe in the stores, since it's not less of a kind of professional job?
Yeah. So again, I think as our society is moving forward in the right way, it's top of mind. And importantly, we have seen that if you're working at our corporate headquarters, in order to attract and retain individuals, and I don't want to gloss this too hard, but because older folks like myself care about the environment too, but yeah, generationally, we have a group that says, look, I do not want to work for a company that is not purpose-driven. And purpose-driven means E, S, and G. And are you doing those things? And if you are, then I want to work for you and I want to make a difference for you. So we think that this works hand in glove with getting the best talent by being part of this solution on the ESG. So that would be like the corporate side. And increasingly, we're seeing it, of course, in our stores and distribution centers. So they have choices, right? They have choices in today's labor market to work really wherever they want. If you want a job, you can go, right? So we have seen where they feel connected to us. They feel like this is a great company to work for. They are making a difference and they are treating people well, whoever that is. So that is an element. And I do not think, Jesse, this is going to go away at all. I just don't. I think it's just part of what you need to be as a company. And frankly, it's important, right?
Absolutely. It's great to hear you say that, because anecdotally, we hear it a lot that, you know, your employees are going to want this, your employees do want this. And so it's just nice to hear a company of your size say that, yes, that's actually what our employees are asking for and wanting to contribute. And just that they want to help you make a bigger difference, right? Like that's the end goal, I think, for the top talent. We all want those people who are passionate and purposeful working for us, just like you said.
Correct. Exactly.
Oh, well, Steve, this has been so insightful. I feel like there's so many things we could talk about. Your ESG report is chock full of really great data and information. So again, I encourage listeners to go and to check that out. It'll be in the link in the email. And hopefully we'll continue this conversation throughout the year. Thanks so much for being here.
Jesse, thank you so much. Really appreciate all your great work. Thanks again.
Great. Thank you.